having a clear understanding of what my project's going to take and having some confidence that it's actually going to take that is, I think, a really important.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Mutually Human podcast. I'm Lori Maxon, the Director of UX here at Mutually Human, and I'm with Mark Van Holstein, the President. How are you today, Mark?
Good, Lori. How are you?
I'm doing well. For those of you out there, we are a custom software company out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. We've worked with many companies over the years to develop all kinds of applications, web and mobile. Our goal on this podcast is to have meaningful discussions about how to make technology more human. Today's topic that we wanted to chat a little bit about, we've talked about this, Mark and I have talked about this multiple times, is how to evaluate different software partners. So obviously, being one of those software partners people are choosing between, we're always curious to know what makes those decisions and what's behind some of those decisions. So prior to this, we talked about a couple big topics, but Mark, for this conversation, let's dig into each of them a little bit more detailed. So the first one we talked about is one of the things that's really important in choosing a software partner is really understanding and evaluating their track record. So Mark, for somebody who has a few different agencies or companies that they're evaluating, and they want to get a good sense of their track record, what are some things that you would recommend they do to get to the bottom of that?
I think the primary thing I'd look at in terms of track record is really starting to talk to some of their past clients, some of their references, and really dig into how the process went for them. Start to understand, what were the projects that you did with this potential company? What were the expectations up front? How did it actually play out in the end? And start to see if they have obviously satisfied clients, if they have clients who are who got what they expected, who understand what went well and what went poorly in the whole process, so you can just get a picture of their experience.
I think one of the big buckets when you talk about what went well and if they got what they expected is probably coming down to also delivering on time and on budget. What are some ways, I mean, obviously that's a topic to understand. What are some ways that people can to uncover, okay, is this partner going to be able to deliver on time and on budget?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that obviously the partner is going to say that they will, right? Like, I mean, if anyone is asked, hey, are you going to deliver on time and on budget? I don't think most people are going to say, no, we're going to not
Probably
deliver
not
on time and on budget. So I think you're generally going to get an answer from them that, yep, we are. But I think that, really the thing that's going to show you that that's true is, again, talking to those past clients to see if that actually played out, to understand what sort of expectation were you given up front in terms of time, budget, et cetera, and where did it end up? And start to understand, are they, from talking with these, unbiased, potentially third parties who have worked with them before, what does their track record actually look like in that respect?
Yeah, and I think before even calling those references, a couple questions or at least a couple topics you can talk to people about is just asking about the process of tracking and reporting budget. The other thing is really understanding how they're quoting the project, so hourly versus quoted project. Can you talk a little bit more detail about those two different approaches and maybe the trade-offs of each?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, there's a lot of software development that's done with sort of the expectation that it's hard or impossible to really quote a software project. And so, a lot of software companies really, price themselves in terms of time and materials and go about the project and they'll pull together some estimates. But ultimately the actual work is just done time and materials. And I think that can sometimes be a decent approach, especially if you're going into something that's really new and unknown, and truly hasn't necessarily been done before. It really can be hard to come up with a good idea of what that's going to cost, because you're kind of, forging a new path and doing some stuff that you haven't done before. So there are times where that's a good fit, but I think that there are other times where, while we haven't built this particular application before, we've built a lot of things like this or that use similar functionality, or the process of building the functionality that we need to build is very similar or like stuff that we've done in the past. And so, we're able to pull on that experience to start to give clients a much clearer picture in terms of what the project's actually going to cost and how long it's going to take. And I think for any business really, but especially startup businesses who are early on in their journey, having a clear understanding of what my project's going to take, and having some confidence that it's actually going to take that is, I think, a really important thing. Just like you wouldn't go into build a house and say, hey, this house is going to cost between $200,000 and $400,000. I want a little more clarity as to what exactly I'm going to
Yeah.
get for this money before I say, yep, cool, start digging the hole.
Right. Or our contractors make X per hour. So when
Right.
they're done. And that's how much you'll pay for your house.
Yep.
Okay, another topic we talked about a little bit was as a client, if I'm a client valuing software partners, understanding what type of involvement I will have. So, am I going to need to be really hands-on? What is the difference between what an internal company will do from a product management standpoint versus me as a product owner and what I do? That's obviously something we've talked a lot about and trying to figure out where those lines are. But given our current successes and experience, what would you say, how would you describe the differences of an involvement of a product owner versus you when you're running as a product manager at Mutually Human?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that I want to touch on is that building software requires a lot more than just hiring a developer. Their building software is not a thing that takes a single person with a single skill set. There are a lot of different skill sets that go into building software, from being able to do the software development. And even there's a range of front end, back end, infrastructure, all that kind of stuff that needs to happen. But from doing visual design to user experience design to doing user research and product planning and all these different skill sets that generally speaking you're not going to find those things all within one person. And I think that's not always super clear to people new to software development, who are building maybe their first thing, that all of these different skill sets are really required to build a good product. Again, I always go back to the house analogy. Just like you're not going to go build a house and, hey, I'm going to go hire a framer and like he can get he can build the whole house, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of different skills that go into building that house, from an architect and a designer to framers and drywallers and carpentry people and flooring people. Like there's tons of different skills. You're not just going to go hire a one person who can do all that stuff.
Right.
So I think that's one important thing to understand. That being said, like I think that when you're working with a company, there's a variety of skills of all of those potential roles that are necessary. Any individual company may offer just some or all of those actual needs for a project. So one thing you should be aware of is what services, what of those roles, what skill sets does the company you're working with have, to get a good picture of what you potentially need to bring to the table, or find additional help doing. We obviously often try to bring the full suite of services to the table. Most of the clients that we work with tend to be people who have either not built software before, or at least that is not their full-time job primary focus, and they're really looking to us to really become that full team for them. And so in that perspective, their focus is really just on helping to guide the decisions about what are the business goals that we're going after, and what particular features are we going to be pursuing to achieve those goals, and helping to connect sort of the business and client needs with the actual technical team that's going to be building it.
Yeah. And I think to build on what you're saying with, you're looking for a company that is full service and that can bring a certain suite of talents and experience to the table. I think the other thing is to ask people who will actually be on your team, right? At least from a standpoint of, a lot of times, and we get this question from people all the time, because you and I are usually on the front end of the sales side, and they're saying, well, who's actually, are you going to actually be on my team? So to get a sense of, are you talking to the people that will then in turn actually do some of the work for you? I think is another important thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, next. Um, one of the topics that we've again brainstormed is, and this is something that we pride ourselves in. We think is really important if you're evaluating a software company is will they focus on your business goals? So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's I've seen it all too often that um, software development teams, or even just the people who are building the software are focused a lot on what it is they're building, and they may be doing a good job building that thing, and so they may even build something that's high quality and has a bunch of different features, and they're done well, but it sort of misses the mark in terms of what is actually needed by the users or the customers of that piece of software. And
Yeah,
so I
you
think
probably see that mostly in like startups too, right? Like they need
yep,
a leaner approach, and it's like you don't need to build the whole thing at I think to steal your term, like NASA quality level yet, right? It's like
right.
what does the business need?
Yeah. And so, we really, on all of our projects, focus in on, what are the objectives as an organization that we're building the software for? What are the objectives that we're setting out to solve? Who is going to use this software? What do they need to do with it? What do they need to accomplish? What benefit is this going to provide the business? And really make sure we use that as a filter to push all of the potential features that we're evaluating building through, to make sure that we're not building a feature that, on paper it sounds good and it looks interesting and it sounds exciting, but when you actually step back and look at it, it's like, oh yeah, that's not actually really at least directly solving the problem we're setting out to solve. And we're kind of distracted by the fun shiny thing over there. And so it's really about helping to identify what you're going to get the most value from in terms of what you're building, not just trying to build something well.
Mm-hmm. How would you, so I think one of the things that is always challenging so I'm not a developer. So if we're interviewing a developer, there's certain things I'm looking for in terms of how they work with design, how they think about problems, how they approach things, but I can't evaluate the quality of their code, right? And I think that's always a really challenging thing when a company goes out and they're not a software company and they're going to try to hire somebody who builds software. It's really hard to understand, how do I know you're going to build a quality thing? I can't take a peek and check, right? So what are some questions or some things to look for in order to start gauging somebody's ability to deliver high quality and scalable code?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that I would potentially look at on that. One would be that there's some things you can do up front, and there's some things you can do sort of after you've built and have some experience with it. But on the upfront, I'll jump back into the sort of like references part of it. Get some, definitely seek to talk to their references and get some understanding of how well did the things that they built hold up for them. How many, what kind of issues have they had, how often, how major have they been, to start to understand, like, is what they built doing what they said it was going to do at the end of the day, and has that held true for 6, 12, 18, 24 months after the fact, or has it been a pretty rocky road? And even beyond that, starting to understand what were the early stage experiences after you first launched it. Did you launch it and everything was smooth sailing, or did you launch it there's a ton of rough edges and a ton of challenges that you had to go through before you got to a fairly stable point? So from a reference perspective, I think that can be a really useful thing up
Mm-hmm.
front. As you're getting further down the path with them, I think that one of the things you can do to understand, even though maybe you don't have necessarily the skill set to look at it and understand it directly, would be to do that own check of your own software that you've now had built. Is it working well? Is it buggy? Are new releases and new features causing new problems to crop up all the time? Are you finding that things that were working now aren't working? Or issues that you had come back, or disappear and come back? What does that look like from your experience of actually using it? How often do you have users potentially reporting challenges or issues as well? So I think both of those things can help serve sort of upfront to get an idea of potentially how well they do, but also down the road, how it's actually working for you.
Yeah. And I do think along the same lines, another really important thing to look for is somebody who's going to serve as your guide through this process, because there are some areas that, not being a developer, you're not going to be able to have complete insight into everything that's happening. And so having somebody who can translate that information, I know that's something that not to toot your horn or anything, but that you do really well, right? Is you come from a development background, but you also have a very like business minded and product focused role at Mutually Human and with our clients. So you're able to translate what is happening with the development team and present that to the client in order for them to make really informed business decisions, to understand the trade-offs of different choices, to understand the trade-offs of different implementation of that. So I think asking questions and finding out, what their process is in terms of investing the time to teach you about the process and investing the time to explain the pros and cons and such, I think is really important.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've heard, I don't know how many times I've heard from people that it's really helpful to be able to, like you said, translate those underlying technical things that they maybe don't understand into something that they can understand the trade-offs that are being made between those things, even if they don't fully understand the implementation details of those, and use that information to be able to make well-informed decisions in the process.
Speaking of process, I think that there's a wide range of process that you might see at a company, all the way to the one side of very little process, kind of winging it all the time, loosey goosey, to the other side of being like super rigid and methodical, and process above all. Where do you think some of that sweet spot is in terms of developing software?
Yeah, I think all extremes are generally not really where you want to be. There's some level of moderation in there. I think that having a clearly well-defined process that's followed is really important to being able to get consistent and reliable results out of the software development process. But being so rigid that there's not room for flexibility and pragmatism throughout the process, I think also is a very dangerous place to be.
Mm-hmm. So asking potential partners to explain their process, but then probably follow-up question of, all right, well, what are some examples when that process doesn't work, and what do you do, and how do you flex based on changes that happen during the project, or weird situations that might come up.
Yeah, I think that's super important.
I think one of the biggest things in a process that you're looking for is communication, right? Looking for a company that's going to be really good communicators. So you're looking, are they responsive? Are they listening and asking good questions? How are they going to communicate with me during the build? That type of thing. What have you found in terms of communication? What are some of the best practices that you feel like people should look out for when it comes to selecting good communicators?
Yeah, I mean, I think even early on in this one, again, I'll go back to always check references. Always check references. Like there's a lot of this kind
So
of
do you
information
think they
can be
should call
gained from that.
references?
No, I don't think they should. But I
Yeah,
do
I
think
was
that
just curious.
in the process, they should also be thinking about like use your experience in the sort of like pre-sales conversations as at least one indicator of how they are at communication, right? Like if their company isn't good at following up with you and checking in with you even before they've won your business, that's likely a really good indicator of how they're going to be throughout the life of the project. So pay attention to that, and don't discount how that communication goes before the project, to see that it's an actual indicator of what will happen during it. But beyond that, I think it's important to see that you have regular and easy access to the team that's going to be helping you build your software. On all of our projects, we have regular weekly meetings with every client that we work with. We're in, they have access to us in Slack or email or our phone numbers, so that if they need anything, they can always call us, send us an email, and we can get in touch really easily. And that goes both ways with them as well, so that if we need something in the process, we can touch base with them. But one of the things that we think is really important as well is there's a lot of, given that there's a number of people on the project and everyone needs to stay well informed, we always make it a point to try and any communication that happens, especially if that communication is done verbally on the phone or face-to-face or over a Zoom call, that information is distilled and written down and shared with the team, I think it's a really good, helpful process to make sure that everyone heard the same thing in those conversations, but also to make sure that should we need to look back and be like, what decision did we make? Where did we end up with that thing? We've got that clearly communicated and documented together.
Yep. All right, last topic. I think a couple topics, I guess, grouped into one. One is I think you're looking for someone who you also just enjoy working with, right? Because part of it
Yeah.
is just a human connection, having somebody that you trust and that you feel like share some of the same values, which leads me into I think a question that's always good to ask is what are your values, or what do you prioritize at your company? And so I think obviously we have our values, and those aren't necessarily right or wrong for people that are seeking. I think what the key thing is looking for values that you share, right?
Yep.
Things that you both companies hold as important. So anything else on the value
No, I
more
mean, I
personal
think it's,
topic?
I think that you'll find that you're going to spend a decent amount of time, uh,
Mm-hmm.
physically with or virtually with the people that you're working with on this. And I think, as in any part of life, it's best to work with people you enjoy working with. And I think you can do your best work when you are with people you enjoy and you're with people that, who share similar values to you. Um, you're gonna get the best out of yourself and those around you, if you're working in that sort of environment, as opposed to like, yeah, I mean, I don't really like him that much, or I don't have any like connection with him, but he's
Mm-hmm.
fine. It's not going to be necessarily as quality of a project or a process, in that sort of situation.
The other thing that I just thought of while you're talking is something that many people, at least our clients, have said was part of a decision maker in choosing us, that they found to be a very valuable thing is choosing somebody who is as excited and passionate about the project that you're working on. And I think you talked a little bit about, it's not just like what we're building, but why, and really looking for people who are seeking to understand the why and seeking to sort of jump on board with some of that and help you figure out if this is the right direction, but also, bringing that passion and excitement to the project.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, it's hard not to, at least for me, and I know for you, Lori, it's hard not to get excited about the different projects we work on. And we often, really get lost in, accomplishing the goals and the needs of our clients. And I don't think that's true of all of the folks that we've heard from, of past vendors that some of our clients have worked with. It becomes a very like mechanical operation, like just what do we need to do? We'll go
Mm-hmm.
do it, as opposed to sort of being invested and involved in seeing that outcome through.
Mm-hmm. All right. Those are the big topics we wanted to chat about today. Our next step is after this, after we hit stop recording, we're gonna flesh out a very specific list of questions so that our viewers today, if they so choose, they can download. So they'll have a comprehensive guide of questions to ask and areas to focus. So you can find that on our website. Tell them where, Mark.
You will be able to find the thing that we haven't made yet,
Yes.
on our website somewhere for sure.
At mutuallyhuman.com/ how to evaluate software. No, that's too long of a URL.
We'll have it in the show notes.
We will have it in the show notes on the URL where you can download this amazing guide yet to be created. Thank you very much for joining us. We hope that you will join us in future podcasts. And wherever you're listening to our podcast, if you can give us a review, that will help other people find us and help us continue to have discussions that will hopefully benefit more people out there looking to change their company with custom software. Thank you.
See you, Lori.
Bye.